battle of lightweight prospects looking to impress in their respective UFC debuts. We have Watford's own, the future Sam Patterson, taking on Red Fox. No, it's not Fred Sanford. It's Yanal Ashmoz. And Matt, coming up this weekend, these two guys, I mean, they have been very impressive as of late. And if you have a look at it, I mean, Sam Patterson, he fought on Dana White's Contender Series this past summer. He was the impromptu kind of like co-main event. I mean, it's hard to really look all that great when you're fighting right before Bo Nickel, but for Patterson, he was able to go out there. He had a very, very impressive performance, and he took on a very, very well-seasoned fighter in Vinicius Sensi, a guy who was a knockout artist in his own right. So I want to throw it on back to a clip from our Contender Series videos from this past summer, really giving praise to Sam Patterson. This is a fight that I've been expecting for a long, long time, and we kind of talked about Sam Patterson. You might remember it at the end of last year. And I threw a line out there because John Gooden put a tweet out and he said, I'm working on a project about Sam Patterson. I thought, what? John Gooden's working on something on his own and it's not UFC related? What is this? So I threw him a line and he said, yeah, it's coming out in December. Check it out. He did like a behind the scenes in camp with Sam Patterson. Holy smokes. You talk about a guy that's dedicated to like cardio. It's like Brandon Davis before they sent him outside of the UFC, but that's what Sam Patterson does all the damn time.
And you normally don't look at tall, thin fighters in the lower weight classes and think, wow, cutting all that weight's really going to help their cardio. But you're right. Sam Patterson never stops going. And that's a really nice thing to see from a guy who has to use his range as effectively as he does. The thing that I do like about Patterson is he doesn't really get dissuaded by anything. But he's going to stick to the game plan. He's going to be steady. And I think that's going to be really important in this matchup. We both talked about, just let me finish this, about Sam Patterson. We don't often talk about fighters before they get on Contender Series. Sam Patterson's someone who we both known about for a little while now.
But Matt, yeah, when we focus in on this one, I wrote a ton down. But when you look at Sam Patterson, the nickname's the future. Macy Barber's the first future.
We got to stop with this.
Ian Machado Gary's the second future.
It's too bad.
He's a really interesting guy because if you look at it, he trains at a Team Crossface, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. He's got that win over UFC vet Felipe Silva. Now for Felipe, he went 0-2 in the UFC. But if you like watching the Cody Garbrandt knockout over Rafael Assunção, go watch Sam Patterson knockout poor Felipe Silva. It's full extension right hook to drop him out. Like he was out like Larry the Enticer. Are you silly? He was completely knocked out. And if you look at it, like some of his other fights, we talked about this off air, his fight against Magomedov, he's getting out wrestled. He's getting pressured. He doesn't have much, to give his opponent. I'm going to put the mic down. He gets Magomedov in and then he cranks the submission. And then once it gets down to the mat, he rolls it. He gets the finish, all that body weight. He's out of Watford. Maybe he's a big soccer fan, but the couple things I will say, Sam Patterson fights with low hands, and it's not like Julian Erosa, and it's not like, some of the fighters that we have on this weekend's Dern Jiaonan cards. So you better watch those videos, but he does walk guys down with low hands. He can get hit. The reason I know he has a good chin is because he gets hit clean in some of his fights.
This is going to be a bit of a hot take, but they were both in Brave, so maybe we could get it because the other guy hasn't won in the UFC yet. Sam Patterson could fight Guram next. Is that too much?
No, he's not. No, yeah, that's way too much.
I remember I was like, wait, poor Felipe Silva. We got to give Felipe Silva more of a shout out because he did go from fighting Guram to Sam Patterson back to back, and that's a terrible roll of the dice for anybody not in the UFC.
Well, folks, we've reached the conclusion of Dana White's Contender Series 2022. I mean, it's been a great year with the picks. It's been a lot of fun. You guys wanted the show. We wanted to have some fun with it, Matt. We have 1 week left. We want to end up in the plus. The pick here, I'm going with Sam Patterson. I've been talking about this guy for a really long time. I've been really impressed by his skill set. And if you look at it in 2022, lightweight's still on fire. You look at the guys that he's beaten. I mean, Kunkar, Pasha, Azmaev, where he finished them in the second round. The Kamil Magomedov submission win was amazing and a come from behind. The Juron fight was great with Brave CF 51 last year. And the Felipe Silva knockout that he had a couple of years ago in 2020. This is a guy that's been fighting high-level competition and winning impressively. Sure, there's things that you might not like, whether he's 6'4 or 6'3. He does the Luke Rockhold lean back. He does the lean back and he has low hands, but he has power in his hands. He has a good chin. He has good jiu-jitsu, and he can really bring everything together in MMA. So for me, I like him over a very unproven Sensi who has a bit of a questionable record. So I got to go with Sam Patterson in this one. So the Sensi fight was a little weird because Sensi was about a 2-1 favorite in the matchup. And in the first round, all three judges scored it for Sensi. Sensi took him down. Sensi outlanded him, landed a lot of hooks with that crazy kind of southpaw range. Patterson found himself into the fight. Second round, Sensi started to tire. And Patterson, he sensied some blood. So he went out there, he gets the finish. Dana White was all about it. But when you do consider it, I mean, we touched on Patterson quite a bit in this one. John Gooden, oddly enough, wasn't a commentator for that fight. He talked, but he was like, well, Patterson lives a street away from me. He was kind of really all about it. But when you look at it for Yanal Ashmoz, and it's spelled ASHMOZ by the UFC and Topology and SureDog, but on Yanal's own Instagram page and the way that PFL spelled it, there's a U in his last name. So my apologies if that ends up getting changed throughout the week. And yes, we know his first name, what it rhymes with, flannel. It's Yanal. But if you look at it for Yanal Ashmoz, I mean, the guy's 6-0, and he's put on some really impressive performances. And if you consider it, the last 3 fights are with more major organizations. Third to last fight with Ring of Combat, he takes on Armando Getasia. His last time out, he was taking on Dennis Hughes over with the PFL, and before that, took on Ryan Rizko over at CFFC. I've seen Yanal look, labored in some of these fights, but he always wins. I've seen him throw wild looping hooks because that's going to be the big kind of story of this week. Yanal's billed as 5'9", and Sam Patterson 6'3".
He's huge.
But Yanal almost looks smaller than that, so I'm really eager to see what we get out of these two guys. Because Yanal's forearms, he looks like Dan Ugla for the Fish.
Shout out.
The Florida Marlins, or I guess, his time that he spent with the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, that's who I think of.
But when you look at both of these guys, Matt, Yanal's so good at kind of closing distance, throwing those wild shots, and then landing head kicks. His hips must be so darn flexible. I think this is going to be a fight that not a lot of people focus on, but for two hungry guys making their respective UFC debuts, it could be a lot of fun.
It should be a really fun fight, but my problem is the way that Yanal fights is going to open up a lot of the grappling for a guy like Patterson. And Patterson's a weird fighter because defensively with his striking, I do worry about him, especially when he starts to fight some of the upper echelon guys in the lightweight division. Like, we're just talking now about a guy like Fiziev fighting for not a title eliminator, really, but just fighting to become one of the elite fighters in the division. Think of everything Fiziev has had to go through in the UFC. He's fought veterans. He's fought guys who are also on the rise like he is. Like, he has had to go through the ringer to get to where he is at in the UFC to fight for this spot in the division. So, in the lightweight division, we always talk about this. In some divisions, you only need, 3, maybe 4 wins. You can get a ranked opponent. In the lightweight division, you need 7, 8, maybe even 9 wins to get a ranked opponent. But what I will say to Patterson is he does have a very high ability to get finishes in his fights. And you had brought it up, too. He's a guy who the second his opponent starts to tire with their pace at all, he really does pick up on it, and he does pounce on them after that, which is an educated thing for a prospect to do. But I do worry about him again when he starts to fight guys up near the top of the division who have that not only 15-minute cardio, but 25-minute cardio too. I'll wonder when he does kind of find his positions to float in and out of the fight.
We'll see in this matchup against Ashmoz because he trains at a K-Warrior Dojo Tribe, or K-Dojo Warrior Tribe, which is the gym that Habib Nurmagomedov settled with when he came to the States, and then he moved to AKA. But you've seen Alexander Yakovlev out of that gym. You've seen Azamat Murzakanov out of that gym. A lot of Ovs in the last names of folks training at that gym in Fairfield, New Jersey. So an interesting move there for him. But I went down through all of these Yanal Ashmoz fights that you can find out there, and they're very readily available. You go through it, Pro Turn back in 2017. First 3 fights as a pro are over in Israel. And then you see those 2 over with KNO. So his fight against Yona Kohana, I've never seen a more disgusting guillotine choke in my life. That guy picks him up in the air and chokes the lights out of him. So a big win there. He beats Abdallah in the second round. He beat Getasia in the third round. They have that as a second round win. In the fight against Abdallah, he gets beat for pretty much all of that fight. And then he lands a really big shot and knocks him out.
But he does have that power. That's the thing that we do have to, give him credit for. Because he can fall back in these fights, but he carries power late. He has that one-shot ability. Because that's the thing. I don't want us to get overlooked by his technical or deficiencies, I guess.
In his fight against Getasia, he struggles with the takedowns. He struggles with the striking. He struggles with everything. And then that was the one. It was in the third round. Getasia just kind of lets his hands go down just a little bit. Yanal's throwing wild for the fences. Yanal lands one shot with this side, and then he lands this wild overhand left, and Getasia, like a sack of potatoes, hits the ground. And then in Yanal's fight against Ryan Rizko Briscoe's rinse and repeat with the takedowns, beats him in the first round, beats him in the second round, beating him in the third round, and then in the third round, that's where he ends up getting the finish. So you look at that one. I mean, Yanal is a finisher. I know all the wins until the Dennis Hughes fight are by finish. Hughes was taking him down a little bit in the start, and then Ashmos was able to defend some of those takedowns, work his own striking. Ashmos was a pretty big favorite at the start of that fight, about a 3-1. He gets the win, but the weirdest part about it is he's going to be a year to the day removed from his last win over at the PFL, and it's weird. You don't see a lot of PFL Challenger Series fighters end up in the UFC. In December, it was late December, was when Ashmos signed with the UFC, and now he's matched up in this one against Patterson. We touched on Patterson's level of competition in that Contender Series video. So, Matt, we've talked a lot about these two prospects. Both guys are very impressive. For Ashmos, I should say, to really accentuate the highs, his cardio, I don't know how he does it, because he throws absolutely everything into all of his shots, through all of it. The technique might not be there all the time, but he's continued to improve in every single fight. His takedown defense isn't the best, but it has gotten better. K Dojo Warrior Tribe, you're only going to get better there, training out of the States. So, again, he is a very, very wild fighter. He can get beaten, but then he tends to rally back in a lot of these ones. I mean, Patterson is a pretty big favorite. We have a look at the Topology vote. Surprise how stare to you. I'm going to say over under 75% Sam Patterson.
I think they'll be over.
I think they're going to be over. They're over. So 835 total votes, 91% Patterson, 55% by submission. For the 9% that have Ashmos, 58% by decision. Ashmos could clip Patterson, and I don't say that as a like, oh, it could happen, but it probably won't. It could, because Sam Patterson can struggle, just waiting and waiting and waiting, and he's susceptible to getting hit. He's gotten hit big and clean in some of these other fights, but he typically tends to struggle with takedown defense, and I don't know if Ashmos is going to incorporate that offensively in his game. So for me, I do like Sam Patterson, the straight shots to get through, for him to be able to pick his power shots. He does a really good job of landing like double up, triple up, jab, right hand.
And if he takes him down.
So I'm going to go with Sam Patterson in the fight, but this is a very exciting fight between a couple of lightweight prospects.
It is. This is a weird fight, because I think if Sam Patterson wins, and I'm going to admit this right now, I'm going to have a higher opinion of him than I probably should, because I was quite high on him coming into the UFC, and I'm still quite high on him. I do expect him to win this fight, but this is going to be that learning opportunity that we often talk about. So if he does look good, maybe we don't learn a lot just based on where Yanal is in his own career, but I do think Patterson is favored to win this fight for a good reason.
Matt, both of us going with the future. Ian Machado, Gary, no. Macy Barber, nope. Sam Patterson.
It's an overused nickname.
Got to pick a new nickname. A big-time fight coming up this weekend. A lot of prospects out of the UK on this card, taking place in London with two big fights up at the top. Gaethje taking on Fiziev, and then you have Leon Edwards defending that belt against Kamaru Usman. You're not going to want to miss. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say.
Let's get into it.